camera movements. Movie cameras are meant to move. A still and steady camera is boring and dull. Tricky movements of the camera produce various types of shots which can be used for effective visual communication. Panning. When a camera is moved from side to side, this is known as panning. Here the lens scans the scene to provide the viewer with elements of a scene that cannot be included in a wide angle shot. A pan can also reveal information as needed. It can follow a moving object. Panning should be smooth. It should not start with a jerk or end with a sudden stop. Tilting. The movement of the camera head up or down is known as tilting. Tilting the camera up can show height. Tilting it down can show depth. It can also show relationships. For example, the tilt of the camera from a man standing on a rocky ledge with a coiled rope on his shoulder to a man standing alone at the base of the cliff presents the situation. Tilts can also generate emotional responses. Tilting upward can cause feelings of rising interest, expectation, hope or anticipation. Tilting downwards can lower interest and create feelings or disappointment or sadness. Trekking. To trek a camera is to move the camera along with a moving subject or to move it parallel with the scene. If a camera were to move along with a person walking along a sidewalk, this would be trekking. Trekking creates a feeling of observation or inspection. Dollying. Moving a camera towards or away from a subject is dollying. The direction of the dolly draws different types of attention from the viewer. When the dolly moves towards the subject, the viewer's interest is increased. A camera dollied towards a sleeping young lady on a dark stormy night in a horror movie indicates that something is about to happen. Add the scary music and we know something is definitely about to happen. When the camera is dollied away, interest in the subject is lowered and tensions are relaxed. Zooming. Zoomed in and zoomed out are the other techniques which can be used for creating stunning visual effects. Zooming is basically not a camera movement, but getting the subjects viewed closer or further away from using a zoom lens. It enables the videographer to be closer or further away from the subject without moving the camera. With the push of a button or the moving of a lever, the lens can be zoomed in and become a telephoto lens, or when zoomed out, it will become a wide angle lens. The ability to zoom a lens in and out gives a tremendous amount of creativity to the videographer. Zooming is just changing the focal length of a lens, also changes what is included in the frame. This means as you zoom in, the lens changes from wide angle to telephoto, and this changes the angle of coverage of the lens. When the angle of coverage decreases, this eliminates elements in the frame. A very slow zoom in or out can take a long boring static shot and make it seem short. For example, you are taping a speech with one camera. You cannot take the camera off the speaker. This is not too interesting. However, by using a very slow zoom shot, the shot is constantly altered to create a more interesting version. Shot composition. Composition is the art of arranging the elements of a scene, mass, line, tone or depth to emphasize the center of interest. The aim of the camera person should be to balance the picture so that the eye is led inevitably to the main subject of his shot. There should be no vacant spaces or distracting detail to entice the eye away. The shot must be balanced, but symmetry should be avoided. Placing the main subject on the intersection of thirds or at the apex of a triangular composition are well proven methods of achieving the aims of composition. The four basic methods of achieving a good shot composition are: first, perspective of mass; second, perspective of line; third, perspective of tone; and fourth, differential focus. Lines which run parallel to the edges of frame present a formal, neat composition, but are not as interesting as diagonal lines. Smooth, flowing curves in a scene suggest tranquility and softness. Diagonal movements across a scene is usually more interesting than horizontal or vertical movements. Movement is more significant if it contrasts with other movements in the scene, or if the other subjects in the scene are static. The center of interest should contain the highlights of a scene or provide the greatest tonal contrast. A dark tone at the bottom of frame provides a suitable base on which to rest the center of interest. The corners of a shot should be ideally darker than the rest of the scene, so that the eye will concentrate on the scene itself. Those engaged in television are continually striving to add perspective illusions to this two-dimensional medium. Rule of thirds. There are some simple cinematography techniques that will have a great impact in making your video look more professional. The rule of thirds is one of the most useful composition techniques. It's an important concept to learn, as it can be used in all types of productions to produce visuals which are more engaging and better balanced. The rule of third is a technique of dividing the frame up into a 3x3 grid, splitting your frame into 9 boxes. Our natural impulse is to put our subject dead center, but a centered subject will look like they are caught in a spotlight, and by dropping them in the center of the frame, it gives them nowhere to go. Instead, by positioning your action in any of the 4 vertices where those 9 boxes meet, you create a balance in your composition that feels more natural. For example, a side view of a person driving a car. On the top left vertex is the driver's head and shoulder, which follows their arm down to the lower right vertex to the steering wheel. This creates a nicely balanced frame of the driver on the top left and the wheel on the lower right. Relatives of the rule of thirds are headroom and lookroom. Just as the rule of thirds splits up your frame to add balance, headroom and lookroom mean to give your subject a little extra room in wherever direction they are facing. If you are filming a public speaker, position them so there is a little less room at their back and a little more above their head. Subconsciously, we picture the edge of the frame as a wall. So, by giving your subject more lookroom and headroom, there is a space for them to speak into. By not giving them enough lookroom, they will look like they are talking to a wall. Varying your shots will keep your audience interested by giving them something new to look at or an object presented in a new way.